Today we're looking at something really important, the realities in Gaza. Right now, April 2025.
Yeah, and we're doing it by listening directly to people there.
Exactly. We're using insights from a community Zoom call, hearing from Ahmad and Sana inside Gaza.
Their voices, their experiences, it cuts through the noise, gives that unfiltered perspective on life there.
Absolutely. So our aim here is to really unpack their testimonies, understand the core challenges, their viewpoints.
Get a clearer picture beyond just headlines.
Okay, let's dive in. Ahmad, who's in Rafah, he starts off painting a really stark picture, especially since the 2023 escalation.
Stark is the word. He actually used the term dire.
Dire. Wow.
Yeah. And he backs it up. Talks about the blockade tightening since 2023.
No, the human cost.
Over 50,000 dead, he stresses. Mostly civilians. It's just a devastating figure.
It really is. And then there are the daylight struggles he mentioned, like electricity.
Oh, yeah. Maybe 4 hours a day, he said.
4 hours. Think about that. Just managing daily life, food, communication.
Everything becomes incredibly difficult. And linked to that, he brought up male unemployment.
Right. That figure was shocking.
Around 60%, he estimated. Men like him just can't find work.
60%. That's not just about money, is it? It's about purpose, providing.
Exactly. It erodes things, Social structures, individual hope can push people to, desperate measures sometimes.
He also mentioned the effect on young men, didn't he? Feeling trapped.
Yeah, completely stuck. Some turn to protests, he said. Others, maybe worse paths. It's that sense of hopelessness.
The deep hopelessness.
But the thing that seemed to hit him hardest, what he really emphasized.
Oh, what's that?
The kids. Seeing kids starving, scared. That's what truly breaks you, he implied.
God, that brings the human cost right home. An entire generation growing up like this.
It's hard to fathom the long-term impact.
So, building on that overview, Sana, she's a nurse in Khan Yunis. Her perspective really focuses things, especially on women and girls.
Yes, and she immediately brings in data, which is powerful.
What data was that?
UN data showing 70% of the deaths are women and children. 70%.
70. That just stops you in your tracks.
Yeah.
It shows how disproportionate the suffering is.
It really does. And her experience as a nurse, it's harrowing.
Tell us about that.
Hospitals basically destroyed, rubble. Women forced to give birth in tents.
In tents, without
anesthesia, yeah. The risk, the suffering, unimaginable, really.
Just basic survival becomes a huge challenge.
And the lack of essentials, Sana talked about helping mothers who had nothing. No formula for their babies, no diapers.
Nothing. It's a fundamental breakdown.
Total breakdown. And then there's the food situation.
She mentioned famine levels.
Famine levels of food insecurity.
Yeah.
And specifically pointed out 46,000 pregnant women are going hungry.
46,000 pregnant women. The knock-on effects for them, for their babies. It's a crisis within a crisis.
Absolutely. It shows how these things cascade.
Okay, let's shift a bit to how this impacts gender roles. Ahmad talked about the pressure on men.
Huge pressure. Expected to provide, right, but how? No jobs, no safety.
He mentioned his brother, didn't he?
Yes. Detained last month. He called it an arbitrary arrest. Commonplace, apparently.
So there's this constant fear, this lack of control.
Exactly. And he used the word emasculating, that feeling of powerlessness.
No, that can lead to
risky choices sometimes. Things like smuggling, desperate attempts to fulfill that provider role.
It's a terrible cycle. But he also mentioned women's resilience.
Yeah, he pointed to women like Sana, keeping families together, holding communities together, even when stretched incredibly thin.
Amazing strength.
It really is. And Sana talked about that too, how the caregiving role just gets massively amplified in conflict.
It's not just childcare, is it?
No, it's managing scarce resources, emotional support under trauma. It's survival work.
And the impact on girls, particularly education.
That was deeply worrying. Sana has seen girls dropping out of school, maybe 80%, she thought, just to help their families survive.
80%. That's
right.
The future implications are massive for those girls, for society.
Huge. And then there's the increased risk of violence.
In the shelters.
Yeah, overcrowded shelters. Sexual violence risks go up. She mentioned UN reports confirm this. It's a terrifying vulnerability.
Just layers upon layers of risk and hardship.
But Sana also wanted to be clear. Women aren't just victims here.
Breach, she stressed their agency.
Absolutely. Leading community kitchens, advocating for ceasefires, they are active. But the mental toll.
She mentioned sleep.
Yeah. Said she hasn't slept properly in months. That just speaks volumes, doesn't it? The constant stress, the trauma.
It does. So, okay. Pathways towards change. What did they say? What needs to happen?
Sana was very clear. First step, lift the siege.
Let the aid flow.
Exactly. Hospitals need supplies, people need food, clean water, basic survival needs.
And she mentioned reproductive care specifically.
Yes, restoring that is critical. It often gets overlooked, but it's vital, especially in conflict.
And her point about peace talks.
Palestinian women need to be at the table, really at the table, not just token representation, for solutions to actually work.
That makes sense. And Ahmad.
Right.
What was his priority?
Ceasefire. Now, stop the bombs, stop the rockets. That's the absolute prerequisite.
Can't rebuild under fire.
Impossible. And then focus on rebuilding schools, homes, the basics of a functioning life.
And for men.
Jobs, opportunities, not guns, a way to contribute positively.
His final thought was powerful, too.
Peace starts with listening, not dictating. That really stuck with me.
Me too. It underlines the need for a fundamental shift.
So, wrapping this up, hearing from Ahmad and Sana, it just makes the human cost so incredibly clear, doesn't it?
Undeniably. The living conditions, the specific suffering of women and kids, the pressures on everyone.
And how it's all connected. The blockade, the lack of resources, it fuels everything else.
Unemployment, hunger, the collapse of healthcare, education. It's all intertwined.
Which leads us to a final thought, really, a question for our listeners to maybe reflect on.
Okay, what's that?
Well, given everything we've heard, these urgent needs, these clear calls for change from people living this reality, what role can wider global awareness, can our understanding play?
How can that help foster a path towards something better, something more sustainable, more just?
Exactly. A path towards a peaceful future for the people in Gaza. It's something we're thinking seriously about.